I'll start with just really briefly refreshing you on what the bill says. So Misuse of Drugs Act, Medicinal Cannabis Amendment Bill. The main purpose of the act was to, of the bill is to set the groundwork for New Zealand to be able to produce its own medicinal cannabis in the future. So it lays the groundwork for the government to be able to set standards for those medicines that will be produced in the future. So that's the regulatory framework side of the bill, and that we don't yet know what that regulatory scheme is actually going to look like. It hasn't been developed yet. So we don't know, for example, when we do produce those cannabis products, we don't know what sort of products they'll be, and we don't know for what conditions doctors will be able to prescribe them. We just know that there will be a regulatory scheme in the future developed by the Ministry of Health over the next couple of years. So that's the first part of the bill. The second part is the statutory defence, which gives a legal defence to those with a terminal illness who have less than 12 months to live, according to a medical professional. So they won't be prosecuted if they're using cannabis to help them with their condition. So that's intended as a temporary defence, which would be in place so long as we haven't yet developed better access to good quality medicines in New Zealand. So we've got the regulatory scheme, we've got the temporary statutory defence for terminal patients, and then we've got the third part of the Act, which is to deschedule cannabidiol or CBD from the Act, which from the Misuse of Drugs Act, which basically means you'll be able to get CBD on prescription. It'll be just treated as any other medicine. So that's actually already happened. It's just a way of formalising what's already happened actually last year in September. So that's the three parts of the Act, of the bill, sorry, not yet an Act. Which brings me to just really quickly going through how the legislative process works, so you know where we are in the process. So this bill has gone through the first reading, which means that all the MPs were happy enough for it to go to Select Committee to be discussed further. The Select Committee is now been looking at it for quite a few weeks, considering the bill, hearing submissions from organisations. We're going to hear submissions from you guys next. They'll then take all those submissions and make recommendations on what the bill should look like. So they'll do a report, and then they'll send up a new version of the bill to Parliament to be passed or not passed, as the case may be. But it probably will be passed because it's a government bill. And so once it's gone through the second reading, if it passes there, it goes to the Committee of the Whole House, and it's discussed in more detail, and then it goes to the third reading, and if that passes, it goes on to become an Act of the Parliament and will be law. So we're just we're in a sort of crucial phase where the bill gets kind of massaged into looking how people actually would really like it to look. So that's where you guys come in. And as I said before, the regulatory framework is going to be developed alongside that. So that's the regulations that will accompany the bill, and that's the scheme that will tell us what the actual medicinal cannabis thing is going to look like what conditions will doctors be able to prescribe for, and what type of products will they be able to prescribe. And so that's being developed by the Ministry of Health alongside and separate to the development of this bill. And realistically, that process is going to take a couple of years. So we may not know for a couple of years how it's all actually going to end up looking. So in that way, the statutory defence that I was talking about before is really important, because it may be that it takes 3 years to get products actually available in New Zealand that have been produced here to a high standard. So until that has happened, we need the statutory defence, the legal defence for people who are continuing to use cannabis. That needs to be strong, and it needs to be in place to protect those people in the meantime. So Anna's going to talk now briefly about what the Select Committee process will look like.
Cool. So on your screen, hopefully you will be able to see a group of photos. So these are the people that are actually on the Select Committee. So we've got Louisa Wall, who's the chairperson. She's a Labour MP. And we've got the deputy chairperson is Dr. Shane Riddy. So he's from the National party. So usually so these are the people that you will be presenting to your oral submission. So normally there would be 8 MPs for National and for Labor, but since Jonathan Coleman retired out of politics, National hasn't officially replaced him yet. So there might be a stand-in. National might put someone else forward, but we don't know if that's going to be the case or who that will be at the moment. So the select committee is going to be splitting into 2 groups for Monday's session. So there will be 3 or 4 of these people that you'll likely be submitting to, but we don't know what combination this will, exactly who's going to be in each group. I would suspect that it would be both Labor and National MPs. So in terms of where we're up to now, there was a large number of submissions, so awesome work, guys. There was almost 2,000 written submissions, which is great. And many people requested to do oral submissions as well. So there was about 45 organisations that have already submitted, and I believe about 200 individuals as well. So it's really awesome to see that many people wanting to put their voice forward. Individuals get 5 minutes, which isn't much time, but as we said before, we're going to hopefully give you some tips and tricks on how to make that most effective. So in terms of what to expect when you get to the committee rooms, when you go to do your oral submission, the committee rooms are located at Parliament. So you go through security, and it's kind of like airport security. So there'll be a couple of security guards there. They're really friendly. You can have a chat. They'll ask you to put your bag and maybe your coat through the scanner, and you'll walk through a metal detector. Then there should be some signage directing you to where you should go. If you're unsure or can't find it, you can ask the security team, or there's also the main reception that's right through just past the security. So you can go and ask them, and they'll be able to give you directions to the committee room. So when you get near the select committee rooms, you'll be likely met by a Parliament worker who will give you a sticker that says SC on it and a little barcode. So this is a really important to hold on to, because you need to keep it to get out of Parliament. So I lost mine once, and it was very embarrassing.
Trapped in there forever, guys.
Yeah, so try not to do that. When you get to the rooms, you might be able to go straight in, or you might have to wait outside, say if the select committee is not ready yet, or there's too many people in there to hold, if they can't hold any more people. So, but there is chairs outside that you can wait. And as I said before, there will be a committee staff there to be able to help. So when you do get into the room, just take a seat at the back. There's public seating, and wait for your name to be called by the chairperson. And then when that happens, then you just go up and sit in the I think there's like 2 or 3 seats, and that's when you will be welcomed by the chair or the deputy chair, and you can start your submission. We really advise going early, just so you don't have to worry about running late or finding the place, but also you might want to sit in and listen to other people's submissions just to get a vibe of the room and how it's going. If you do require accessible routes and facilities, you can contact the committee secretariat first. So we'll be sending you her details in that resource Carly was talking about, so they can actually make the process as easy as possible for you if you do want to do that. And yeah, that's pretty much that section for me. So I'll pass back to Carly.
Yep, and everything's fully wheelchair accessible as well.
Yeah.
Yep. So just in terms of how you go about preparing your submission, the MPs will have a copy of your written submission in front of them, and ideally and in theory they would have read that before you turn up, but actually in practice they're going to be hearing from dozens of people on the day, so they possibly or probably really are going to be reading your submission sort of alongside you giving your submission. So we really recommend that you do not read out your submission for your oral submission. Do not think about doing that, because it will just really annoy them, because they've got the copy right in front of them on their screens. So ideally you'll be giving something similar to what you've written, but you can tell the same story, but you want to do it in different words. if that makes sense. Or you could present something quite different if you want to as well, and you can also include or give them some supplementary evidence as well on the day if you do want to do that. So you've only got 5 minutes. So you want to really think about in advance, what are my key points? And I think the best way to do this is like, think if I was only actually allowed to give 3 sentences, say 3 sentences to the committee, what would my 3 sentences be? And once you've got your 3 sentences that you know you would say, then you can sort of riff around that, try and work out, you know, how to present those key points in a way that's really accessible and engaging. But wouldn't probably try and do more than say 2 to 4 key points in a 5-minute thing. You don't want to overload it, but you want to really push home the ones that you think are really the most important for you. And I think the best, from your perspective, I think the best thing to do is to try and find a way of being really clear about what your recommendations are, like what you actually want them to do as a result of your presentation. So, and especially apply the bill to your personal situation as well. So say, for example, I've got a medical condition and this bill doesn't help me, and what I want you to do is widen the statutory defense, for example, so that it applies to family members, not just the person who's terminally ill. So that could be your key message, and then you could sort of start to apply that to your personal story and say, well, this is my story, and this is why under your current bill, my family member will not be helped at all, or I won't be helped at all by this bill. I'm still going to be a criminal under this bill. So get your key messages, work out how you can present them in an engaging way, sort of using your own stories. So a lot of you as patients will be submitting, will have personal stories to tell, and that's, I think, really, really useful at this stage of the proceedings, because we've had lots of organisations sort of talking about the technical stuff. However, if your particular speciality is the research, then by all means use that rather than a personal story, or use both. That's absolutely fine. And I think our impression so far from having sat through the submission process, the 2 days that we've had already, is that MPs, there's still a lot of room for sort of to educate them about medicinal cannabis, what it is, how it's used. They're not experts on it yet. They've only been working on this subject for a very short time. So you guys are the experts. You can really give them a lot of value by telling them your story and by telling them how you use cannabis and why, if you do. So just in terms of structuring your submission, I think it's really key that you prepare yourself well and prepare your structure well, so you know what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. Because I think the most powerful talks you'll ever listen to are the ones where people are really well prepared. So I would, if you travelled a long way to be there, I would definitely say that up front, because I think it makes them listen with more sort of concentration if they think you've made a massive effort to be there. Or if it was difficult for you to get there for whatever reason, do let them know that. Start off by saying who you are, and if you're there to represent anyone else, and sort of why your voice matters, really. Try and do that quite quickly. You haven't got much time. And get onto your key points really quickly, I think, like state exactly what you want right up front. So for example, you could say, in order to get cannabis products that I can afford, I'm going to have to wait years until the domestic market is set up. So I think the statutory defence should apply to people with my condition, not just to those with terminal illness, for example. So where you can, offer them solutions. So it's not just about telling them your story. If possible, explain to them what the solutions are. So what would make it better for me is if the bill said X, Y, Z. It's not always easy to do, but if you have any difficulties with that, you can give us a call this afternoon or tomorrow, and we can sort of help you nut out what it is that would help you get what you need from this piece of legislation. So just in case it helps, I'll run quickly through the recommendations that Drug Foundation made in our submission. So we thought, looking first at the statutory defence for people with terminal illness, we thought this should be widened so it doesn't just apply to those with terminal illness, it applies to people with a whole range of different severe and debilitating illnesses. We thought it should also be widened to include family members, so those helping people who are ill to get hold of cannabis or to take the cannabis as a medicine need a statutory defence, so they're not going to face criminal prosecution. We thought also that there should be a defence for those who are caught cultivating cannabis to help people with medical problems. And then in regards to the regulatory scheme, which will look at the type of medicines that are available and the quality of those medicines and who can prescribe them and for what conditions, we think that scheme needs to be as wide as possible to cover as wide a range of complaints as possible, and we need to have a full range of cannabis products, including whole plant products. And we also recommended that patients should have the legal right to cultivate plants, and this could be regulated quite easily by having a list of patients who are doing that, or there's plenty of different models internationally that that show that it's possible to do that without it leading to people misusing cannabis. One thing that we've really noticed in the submission so far is that it's really important when you give a recommendation or say how you think the bill should look, that you specify if you're talking about a temporary defence or if you're talking about the regulatory framework. So if you're saying, I think people with epilepsy should be allowed to use cannabis, then say that means that when the regulatory scheme is developed, doctors should be able to prescribe for epilepsy. But also the statutory defence should be widened to include people with severe or debilitating illnesses such as epilepsy, so that if I'm caught while you're developing these products, I'll have a legal defence. And again, if you want help trying to frame those, let us know. It's all sort of legal and technical jargon, but hopefully I've explained it in a way that makes sense. Yeah, so as I said before, get your key message across quickly, lead with your strongest point rather than building up to it, because you don't have much time. You may run out of time faster than you think. 5 minutes is really not that long. Try to keep it real simple. MPs don't, as I say, they're not experts on this topic. Don't use jargon, don't assume that they know stuff. Pretend you're talking to someone who is a layperson, basically, who doesn't really know anything about this topic. Just make it crystal clear what you're saying. And also have something up your sleeve to finish off. So a short, powerful finish is really important, almost as important as how you start off. And I think the main thing is to really practice, because the more you can practice, the better it's going to sound. And we've seen submissions where people just read off their paper in a monotone, and that doesn't really get the same impact across. So you want to be able to practice saying it in front of a mirror or practice saying it to a friend in a way that's interesting and engaging, and not just sort of reading with your head down. Also think about timing, think about how much time you've got, and practice it with a clock to make sure that you're not going over time. They'll ask you if you've got questions. Actually, you're going to talk about that in a minute. So yeah, I think that's, in terms of preparation, that's probably everything. Anything else?
Yeah, just one thing that I found really helpful when supporting people to think about what they want to put in their submission and what their most important points are, is how will this bill, in its current state, affect you and your family? So does it work for you? What parts need to be fixed? How does it really, when you drill down to it, how is this going to affect your life? Is it going to make a real impact, or does it need to be changed in any way? So if this bill goes through and you need to be using medicinal cannabis, but you're going to still be at risk of prosecution, that's not a very good outcome. So you really need to drill home to the MPs that their decisions are, they have a real big impact. So that's quite a good way to decide what your most important points are. And yeah, and as Carly said, think about timing. So we would recommend about 1 or 1.5 minutes from your full 5 minutes. Try and be left for questions. So that's a good way. It's a good time when MPs can ask to clarify things, or if they didn't understand something that you said, then you can drive those points home again, which is great.
So having said that, we found that MPs sometimes have questions and sometimes don't. So if they then go, oh no, we don't have any questions, thanks for your presentation, you're within your right to say, well, I've got a few more points in that case, and have a bit more to say at the end, because otherwise you might find you end up giving them 3 minutes and then they don't have any questions and that's it, it's all over. Actually, you've got your 5 minutes, so you can use your 5 minutes.
Yeah. Cool. So I'll just talk now a bit, and we're almost done. Then we'll get to answering your questions. So yeah, just be thinking of those as you go along. So I'm just going to do a bit on how to get the most out of your presentation. So it is completely normal to be nervous, but just remember that the MPs are there to listen to you, and you are the expert. They're not subject experts on this, so you probably have a lot of knowledge that's really important for the MPs to hear. And it's only 5 minutes, so it's over really, really fast. And it's really important to understand, if you make a mistake, don't stress, just a deep breath, then get back to the point you were trying to say. So we would recommend not reading your oral submission straight from the sheet, because if you're looking down at the MP at your piece of paper instead of directly at the MPs, it's easy for them to disengage. So it's way better if you're able to speak directly to them, and that will probably help get your points across a lot more. Of course, you can use your notes to like prompt you, as you've seen me and Carly do, but if you can practice as much as possible, so it's so you're really confident in what you say, then it will get your point across a lot better. It's important to remember not to speak too fast, and to speak clearly. This is particularly important on the phone, because unfortunately the technology is not wonderful. So it's important just to make sure that you articulate well, and that you are, that you're not speaking too fast so they miss what you're saying. We would recommend sticking to your main points. So you might be tempted to go off on a tangent, but with such a short amount of time, and also needing to potentially leave time for questions as well, you don't want to waste it. So you want to make sure that you say everything important that you want to say. This might be a really obvious one, and we did mention it in our workshops earlier, but it might seem really obvious, but try not to upset the MPs. That even if they seem aggressive or annoying or ignorant, it doesn't matter. Stay really calm and polite, because if you're not calm and polite, then they might disengage or ignore what you're saying, which is not at all what we're trying to achieve. So in terms of questions, if the MPs ask you something that you don't know, don't worry. It's better to say, I don't know, than to make something up. And as Carly said before, if they don't have many questions and you still have extra time, you might want to have a bit of extra stuff up your sleeve to say, or you can drive your points home again, because you are allowed to utilise the full 5 minutes. For phone submissions, this is a bit of a tricky point, and we've seen one question already about this. As I said, the technology isn't great, but there are still ways that you can make your submission really powerful and engaging. So the Secretariat's recommended, and I would second her suggestion, try and avoid using a speakerphone. Apparently it makes the quality lower, so it's much better to speak into your phone directly and not through the speaker. Be clear, articulate, not too fast, as I said before. And also, it is, in terms of rapport, it is harder to build this up on the phone, but you might just want to think of a few ways to engage them, saying hello, thank them for being there to listen to you, taking the opportunity, and also after a few sentences, if you're worried about if they can hear you or not, you might want to just check in that they can. So you could go, hello, my name is blah, blah, how are you, thank you for listening. Can I just check that you hear me all right? And then you're just reassured that that you're not being muffled or anything like that. Just a really final note, quick point about privacy. I know this has come up a bit in the emails. There is media in the room and it is open to the public, and as you might have seen, they are live streaming. So it's the same with the written submissions. As a general rule of thumb, don't share things that you're not willing to be made public. If you are admitting to some illegal behaviour and you're a bit worried about this, you might want to think about talking a bit more generally. I was speaking to someone the other day who was talking about the use, they've been using medicinal cannabis in America. So I suggested specifying that it was overseas, that kind of thing. So if you are a bit worried in that regard, then just think about some ways that you could do just to make yourself feel a bit more comfortable. And if you are on the phone, then you might want to not use identifying details like place names and that kind of thing, just to stay a bit more anonymous. We really recommend, if you have the opportunity, sit in before your oral submission so you can get an idea of the room, and you know, see what is working for other people, and you might be able to pick up some tips from that. And yeah, and also just one more point, sorry, I promise it's the last one. If you do want to, if you're feeling a bit nervous or you want some extra moral support, you can take a support person with you. They can either just go with you and not be involved, and sit at the back, or you can take them up to do your oral submission. They don't have to say anything if you don't want them to, but they can be at the table with you. So yeah, that's something to think about as well. And me and Carly will actually both be there on Monday. So if you want to come say hi,
please do.
Yeah, we'd be really keen to know who you guys are, put faces to names. So yeah, and if you have any questions, please let us know.
Also, the Health Select Committee page on Facebook. Sorry, is it Health Committee page on Facebook?
Health Select Committee on Facebook.
Health Select Committee page on Facebook has got the video transcripts from the previous submissions, and we'll also have a live video feed of Monday's procedure, so you can tune in a bit earlier or look at the old ones to see what it's like, and to see what people are saying and things like that. So we're going to take questions. If there are any questions, now is your chance to type them in. Is anyone?
Yeah, so we've got Alison who's asked just about the live streaming. So as we said, through Facebook, you can go find that. So it's got previous submissions on there, so you can take a look at those. But it will also be live streaming on the day. So if you're not able to physically get there, but you want to be seeing what people are saying, then you can
go to Facebook, search Health Select Committee, go onto their page, and it'll just be there.
So we have another question from Alison who wants to know how to get involved in or considering medicinal cannabis. I would suggest being in touch with Shane LeBrun, who I can see is dropped in there. So he runs Medicinal Cannabis Awareness New Zealand, and their website is mcans.org.nz,
maybe?
Yes.
Sorry, Shane, if I got that wrong.
Shane can correct us in the chat. But yeah, he's the walking encyclopedia for medicinal cannabis. So I would probably refer your questions to that. I've got one person here who's noted that they can't travel. We've got a lot of people in that circumstance. Either it might be financial reasons, or they have a condition which means that they can't easily be away from their home. It's really good to actually tell the MPs that, because I think it makes them aware that this is a really important subject to you, but also it makes them aware of how important the decisions that they're making are. So if you can't come to Wellington and present in person, then you can say to them, look, I would have loved to come, but I can't because of A, B, and C. And it might make them just perk up their ears just a little bit more.
Yep. So those who can't come got the option for a phone conference. Unfortunately, that's the only option that they're presenting. We were hoping they were going to travel around the country, but they've decided not to. So it's come to Wellington or talk on the phone at this point.
we've got another question asking why aren't they using video conference calls instead of phone calls. I believe that's because the technology in certain select committee rooms is not very good. So some of the select committee rooms do have video conferencing, but some of them don't. And I think unfortunately the House Select Committee drew the short straw, so they're in one of the older ones.
Yeah, they're stuck in the 80s, sorry guys, so you have to put up with telephone.
Yeah. And we've got another person who's asking that they don't use Facebook. Is there another way to access the panel's background and information? I think even if you don't use Facebook, you will still be able to access the live stream without logging in, I believe so. But it's worth trying anyway.
If you can't work out how to do it, maybe contact
the secretariat.
The secretariat at the select committee, Kiara, and I think we've put her contact details in one of our emails. Just asked her how to get on there, but yeah, I guess they presume most people have Facebook, which is a big leap.
Yeah, and also it asks as well how to find out more about the panelist background and information. You can go on the parliamentary website and it has a bit more details about who's on the House Select Committee, and then you can do a bit of a Google search to find out the backgrounds of the MPs. So for instance, there's Shane Reddy's a doctor, he trained in as a GP, and
Liz Craig's also a doctor, a public health doctor.
Yeah.
So I think it is actually worth, it's a good question. I think it is worth looking up the bios of the MPs that you're going to be speaking to.
Yeah.
Although you won't actually know until the day which ones you will actually be speaking to of those 8 that are, or 7 now that are on the list.
And just one more point on that. I have seen the MPs interpret information quite differently from how I believe the speaker was trying to say. So I would just be really, really specific in the points I was that I'm making. So instead of saying, I want to see a compassionate approach to medicinal cannabis, be really specific about what a compassionate system looks like to you, because they might think it's one thing, but you think it's completely different. So just don't leave anything up to chance. Just be very specific on what you want. And so that's
cool. Well, I think we're probably going to wrap it up there, unless there's any more last minute questions. But just go. Remember that you guys are actually the experts. You know more than the MPs, pretty much, certainly. So don't go in there feeling that you're somehow on the back foot. You know, you're there to help them. You're the experts, and that's the whole point of the select committee process, is to upskill the MPs quickly. That's how democracy works. You know, they have to deal with so many different issues. They're not experts on all of them, or any of them probably. So you guys are going in there. You're downloading. You're getting them upskilled. So they need you. You don't need to be nervous. Be clear about your recommendations if you can. It'll help it. Don't read it out, or at least have lots of eye contact with the MPs. Use personal stories to engage them. And yeah, good luck. And we'll be there, so you can come and say hi to us. And
cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well done. Keep up the fight.
And thank you for tuning in and listening to me and Carly.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
We apologise if there was any hiccups. But really, really awesome to see so many of you guys engaging in the process. So thank you.
Cool. See you later.
Great. Bye.